What if your greatest strength is also your most dangerous liability? We're taught to see high intelligence as a ticket to success, a key that unlocks innovation and a better life. We celebrate genius, admire quick-wittedness, and often equate a powerful intellect with a powerful person. But the work of the brilliant and controversial psychologist Carl Jung reveals a hidden danger lurking within the gifted mind. Jung's theories, they map out a razor-thin line, a psychological precipice, really. It's where the most brilliant minds can turn against themselves, crossing into territories of manipulation, profound self-sabotage, and a unique form of inner darkness. There's a quiet, invisible pain that comes with seeing too much. It's not a sudden, sharp agony, but a persistent hum of awareness that just buzzes beneath the surface of daily life. It's the silent burden of noticing the patterns, hidden motives, and uncomfortable truths that everyone else seems happy to ignore. This isn't just a feeling, it's a psychological reality that Jung dedicated his life to mapping. Here, we'll walk that fine line. We'll explore the hidden dangers of a powerful intellect through a Jungian lens. Not as a condemnation, but as a guide. We'll uncover why the brightest minds are often the most haunted, and what it means for anyone who has ever felt that their own intellect might be a double-edged sword. This is for the person who feels like their mind is both a gift and a burden. We'll look at how intelligence, if left unexamined, can become a breeding ground for the tactics we now call dark psychology, and how, according to Jung, understanding this danger is the first step to transforming it into true wisdom. Ever feel like being intelligent makes life harder? Not easier? It's a strange and isolating paradox. You can solve complex problems and see 10 steps ahead, but you can't seem to deconstruct that feeling of unease that just follows you. You might find yourself in a room full of people, understanding the unspoken dynamics, the subtle power plays, and the hidden anxieties driving the conversation. Yet you feel utterly alone. You hear not just the words being spoken, but the emotional currents running beneath them. The need for validation hiding behind a boast, or the fear of abandonment driving controlling behavior. This is a state that could be described as the curse of seeing too much, a kind of heightened perception that just pierces through the comfortable illusions that allow society to function. You see the contradictions in what people say versus what they do. You see the fragility of institutions that everyone else trusts implicitly. And often, this clarity doesn't feel like a superpower. It feels like a burden. It separates you. It creates a distance between what you know to be true and what you can safely say out loud. This experience can lead to a specific and dangerous internal split. On one hand, you have the conscious mind, the brilliant, rational ego you identify with. This is the part of you that achieves and understands. But on the other hand, there's a growing shadow. Jung's most famous contribution to psychology is the concept of the shadow. The shadow is the unconscious part of our personality, a psychic container for everything we've repressed, disowned, and refused to acknowledge about ourselves. As Jung described it, the shadow is, quote, the thing a person has no wish to be. It holds our primitive instincts, our socially unacceptable impulses, our anger, our greed, our vulnerabilities, everything that doesn't fit the idealized image of the intelligent and rational person we present to the world. But here's the crucial insight. The shadow doesn't just contain negative traits. It also holds our undeveloped positive potentials, our creativity, and our authentic assertiveness. The problem, Jung warned, is that the more you identify with the light of your intellect, the darker and more powerful your shadow becomes. Everyone carries a shadow, Jung wrote, And the less it's embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. This unacknowledged shadow doesn't just disappear, it gains power in the darkness, directing your life from behind the scenes. And as Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is the thin line. It's the gap between the conscious ego, so proud of its intelligence, and the powerful, unacknowledged shadow. This is where high intelligence can curdle into the dynamics of dark psychology, not always aimed at others, but often aimed destructively at the self. Let's break down the 7 most profound dangers that Jung's work warns us about. The first danger is a direct result of the raw processing power of a highly intelligent mind, a kind of hyper-awareness that generates chronic overthinking. The mind becomes a relentless pattern recognition machine, but it doesn't just see patterns and data. It sees them in human behavior, societal structures, and the very fabric of existence. This isn't just observation, it's a mental clarity that goes far beyond simple knowledge. You see not just the surface of things, but the mechanisms and contradictions underneath. For the hyper-aware individual, a simple conversation is never simple. It's a complex dance of unconscious needs and fear-based behaviors. This constant, involuntary processing of psychological data is enormously taxing. It leads to a state known as analysis paralysis, where the sheer volume of possibilities becomes overwhelming. The mind that can see 1,000 future paths is often the one that is frozen, unable to take a single step. This is the intellect turning on itself, where the ability to think deeply actually becomes a trap. It fuels a specific kind of existential dread, a profound awareness of life's absurdities that, well, others seem blissfully unaware of. While others might find comfort in simple platitudes, the overperceptive mind, it just sees the cracks in the foundation of everything. From a Jungian perspective, this is a dangerous inflation of consciousness. It's where the rational mind expands to a point where it detaches from the grounding forces of life, things like emotion, intuition, and simple being. The dark psychology here, it's primarily self-inflicted. It's a form of self-sabotage, where your mind's greatest tool actually becomes its most effective prison. The individual, they get trapped in cycles of rumination, constantly replaying conversations and second-guessing decisions. This isn't a choice, by the way. It's just a cognitive default setting. That very intelligence, which really should be a tool for navigating the world, well, it becomes a tool for constructing an invisible cage of anxiety. This state of being constantly in your head creates a profound disconnect from your body and from the present moment. Life isn't lived, you see. It's simply analyzed. The second danger, it's a direct and painful consequence of the first, the agony of profound isolation. Now, this isn't just being physically alone. No, it's a deep, structural alienation that comes from perceiving the world on a fundamentally different wavelength. As Jung himself expressed it, loneliness doesn't come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to yourself. Highly intelligent individuals, they often feel like they're speaking a completely different language. They might try to share their insights or their concerns about deeper patterns, only to be met with blank stares or, well, just misunderstanding. After a while, they learn that to truly connect with others, they often have to, well, shrink themselves, to play dumb, even, or to simply silence the most active parts of their own minds. This creates a painful internal conflict, because to be accepted, you must betray your own perception. And to be truly authentic, you risk being ostracized. And this constant self-editing, it's just exhausting. It fosters a sense of being an actor on a stage, always performing a simplified version of yourself. Here, the turn toward dark psychology becomes visible. Chronic, profound isolation can curdle into, well, resentment, cynicism, or even intellectual arrogance. When you consistently feel misunderstood, it's easy to develop a sense of superiority, isn't it, as a defense mechanism. From this wounded place, manipulation can start to feel, well, justified. It might manifest as a desire to outsmart people in arguments, or even to see people as just pieces on a chessboard, right? To be moved for your own purposes. This isn't necessarily born from malice, though, but rather from a starved need for connection. If you can't achieve genuine connection through shared understanding, well, you might unconsciously seek a perverse form of connection through control, manipulating a situation to get a desired outcome. It provides a sense of power, doesn't it? In a world where you often feel powerless and unseen. It's a tragic and, well, a distorted attempt to interact meaningfully with a world that often feels fundamentally alien. The third danger arises when the high-resolution lens of an intelligent mind is turned inward. This is the tyranny of relentless self-criticism. The same perception that deconstructs complex systems with stunning accuracy is also brutally effective at identifying your own flaws, mistakes, and shortcomings. You don't just remember your failures, you see them in high definition, with a detailed analysis of how you could have done better. This goes far beyond healthy self-reflection. It becomes a constant, looping internal monologue of judgment. For many highly intelligent people, there's a powerful inner critic, and this is the shadow in one of its most destructive forms. Jung taught that the qualities we most vehemently reject in ourselves get relegated to the shadow. If you build your identity around being intelligent and competent, then any evidence of failure becomes intolerable. Your ego cannot accept it, so it projects this onto an inner critic, who then attacks you with the very standards you claim to uphold. This inner critic, it's a master of dark psychology, and its only victim? Well, that's you. It uses cognitive distortions with surgical precision. It catastrophizes small mistakes, turning them into, like, evidence of total failure. It uses black and white thinking, where anything less than perfection is basically worthless. It'll disqualify any positive achievements, attributing them to luck, while magnifying every single misstep as proof of your inadequacy. This is truly the ultimate form of self-manipulation, where your own intellect is weaponized just to convince you that you're an imposter. This relentless inner assault, it's a primary engine of self-sabotage. Why even start a new project, right? When your inner critic has already convinced you it'll fail. The critic, it kind of keeps you small, just to keep you safe from the failure it's already deemed inevitable. Jung, he saw this whole process as the intellect becoming, well, untethered from self-compassion. He wrote that we really must be charitable to our weaknesses. Without this balance, that intelligent mind, it just becomes a tyrant. And the individual? Well, they become its slave. Overcoming this, it requires not more intelligence, but actually a different kind of strength. It's the courage to confront this shadow critic, to question its authority, and to consciously choose self-acceptance. It requires recognizing that this critical voice, it's not, the voice of truth. It's the voice of a fearful, unintegrated part of the self. Here we arrive at one of the most significant dangers, where the internal struggle begins to spill out and affect the world. This is the danger of ego inflation. In Jungian terms, ego inflation is what happens when the ego becomes overly identified with a single aspect of the self, in this case, the intellect. The person no longer has a sharp mind. They are the sharp mind. Their entire sense of self-worth becomes fused with their intelligence. And this creates an extremely fragile psychological structure. If your worth is based on being the smartest person in the room, then any challenge to your intellect isn't just a minor event, it's an existential threat. The ego will do anything to defend itself. And this is the breeding ground for what could be called the intellectual narcissist. This is where Jung's principle, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow, becomes terrifyingly real. The conscious persona is one of brilliance and rationality. To maintain this bright persona, an equally dark shadow containing feelings of inferiority and insecurity must be repressed. The result is a personality that is outwardly arrogant and dismissive, all in a desperate attempt to keep the shadow hidden. The intellectual narcissist uses their intelligence not as a tool for discovery, but as a weapon for dominance. They engage in intellectual bullying, using complex jargon to confuse and belittle others. They are masters of condescension, making others feel stupid for asking simple questions. They may even gaslight you, insisting their flawed interpretation of events is the only rational one, and that your emotional response? Well, that's invalid. This is dark psychology in its most overt form. Manipulation becomes a conscious strategy for maintaining psychological dominance. The inflated ego feels entitled to be right and to win every argument. It has little empathy because to truly empathize would require acknowledging a common humanity. And that threatens its sense of specialness. Contemporary thinkers like Jordan Peterson have also commented on this temptation to worship one's own intellect. Jung would agree, viewing ego inflation as a profound disconnection from the true, holistic self. The tragic irony is this desperate attempt to prove superiority, it's driven by a profound unconscious fear of being ordinary. The fifth danger is a direct consequence of an unacknowledged shadow, the insidious mechanism of projection. In Jungian psychology, projection is an unconscious process where we take the parts of ourselves we can't accept, our shadow, that is, and attribute them to other people. As Jung himself put it, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Now, for the highly intelligent person who hasn't done their inner work, projection becomes, a primary mode of interacting with the world. The darker their own unacknowledged shadow, the more monstrous the world appears. Think about it. A person who's repressed their own aggressive impulses, they'll see aggression everywhere. And a person who's disowned their own manipulative tendencies, they'll be convinced everyone is trying to manipulate them. They become truly paranoid, seeing hidden plots in every single corner. This isn't just a simple misunderstanding, it's an active distortion of reality. And here's the thing, the intelligent mind is dangerously good at this, because it can construct these elaborate, logical-sounding arguments just to justify its projections. It'll find evidence, to support its claims, weaving together all these disparate facts into a convincing narrative that, it just proves the other person is the villain. This is a subtle but powerful form of dark psychology. By projecting the shadow onto someone else, you can cast yourself as, the innocent victim or the righteous hero. It allows you to abdicate all personal responsibility. For example, if you project your own repressed ambition onto your boss, you can then frame them as a tyrant. This narrative, it allows you to justify your own passive-aggressive behavior or attempts to undermine them. You aren't being malicious, you're fighting back. This happens constantly in intellectual debates, by the way. A person might accuse their opponent of being emotional and irrational, when really, it's their own unacknowledged emotional attachment to their ideas that's driving their hostility. Jung, he saw this as a major obstacle to self-knowledge. As long as you're busy fighting the low demons you see in others, you'll never have to face the ones inside you. And this is why shadow work is so critical. It requires, quote, considerable moral effort, unquote, as Jung said, to withdraw our projections and really have the courage to look at the darkness within ourselves. The sixth danger is one of the most seductive for a powerful mind: the defense mechanism of intellectualization. This is the process of using abstract thought and logic to avoid feeling, well, those messy, uncomfortable emotions. When faced with a painful situation like, say, grief or heartbreak, the mind retreats from the heart and takes refuge in the head. Instead of feeling the pain, you analyze it. You do everything, except the one thing that's required for healing: to actually feel the emotion. For the highly intelligent, this can become, well, a default way of life. Emotions are seen as irrational and inefficient. The world of ideas feels safe and controllable, while the world of human feeling is chaotic. This creates a profound and dangerous split between the intellect and the soul. Jung understood that the psyche strives for wholeness, for an integration of all its parts: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. When thinking becomes the tyrannical function, the other parts of the self are relegated to the shadow. Here, the line into dark psychology becomes chillingly clear. A person who is fundamentally detached from their own emotional life, particularly empathy, can more easily rationalize treating others as objects. This is the archetype of the cold, calculating genius. They can make decisions that devastate people's lives and justify them with cold, hard logic blind to the human suffering they're causing. Think of an executive who can logically justify laying off thousands of workers without a moment's thought for the families they're destroying. They aren't necessarily evil, they're emotionally disconnected. They've intellectualized life to such a degree that people have become mere abstractions. This self-enforced emotional detachment is a form of self-harm. It starves the soul. The person may be successful and respected, but they're often emotionally hollow and unable to form deep, meaningful relationships. Jung believed that emotions are the source of life's value. True intelligence isn't the ability to think your way out of feeling. It's the ability to feel fully and think clearly at the same time. We now arrive at the final and most dramatic danger, the culmination of all the others. This is what happens when the shadow, after being ignored and repressed for years, finally rebels. This is the unintegrated shadow, manifesting his ultimate self-sabotage. Jung taught that the psyche is a self-regulating system that constantly strives for balance. Now, if your conscious life becomes too one-sided, too intellectual, too perfect, too controlled, the unconscious will erupt to restore equilibrium. This isn't just procrastination. No, this is the mind turning its full intelligence against itself in a spectacular act of destruction. Think about it. This is the brilliant surgeon who suddenly develops a tremor in his hand, the masterful politician who makes a foolish error that costs them the election, or the devoted partner who inexplicably starts a fight that shatters a loving relationship. From the outside, it looks like madness, but from a Jungian perspective, it's the shadow finally claiming its due. The unconscious mind essentially hijacks the conscious personality to get its needs met. That need is for wholeness. If the conscious ego has built a life based purely on intellect and perfection, well, the shadow contains all those rejected parts: the need for rest, the desire for chaos, the vulnerability, the anger, the imperfection. And when these parts are denied for too long, they don't just ask for attention, no, they kick down the door. The dark psychology of this is that your own intelligence actually becomes the architect of your downfall. The shadow knows your greatest strengths, and uses them to pinpoint your most vulnerable weaknesses. It knows exactly what to do to bring the whole structure crashing down. This is why self-sabotage often feels like it comes, well, out of nowhere. It's an ambush from a part of yourself you didn't even know existed. Jung believed this process, while terrifying, holds the key to profound transformation. He called it enantiodromia, the tendency of things to turn into their opposite. The catastrophic failure is often the very event needed to break the tyrannical rule of the ego and force the individual to confront their shadow. Ultimate self-sabotage is a desperate plea from the soul for integration. It is a violent and painful process, but it's also an opportunity. It poses the question: must you destroy your life to save it? Or can you find the courage to face your shadow before it forces a confrontation? After walking through this landscape of psychological dangers, it's easy to see high intelligence as a curse. But Jung's work was that of a healer. He didn't just diagnose the illness, he prescribed the cure. The answer isn't to reject your intelligence, but to balance it. The path forward is a lifelong process. He called individuation. Individuation is the journey of becoming your true, whole self. It's the process of integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of your psyche, so you're no longer at war with yourself. It's the path from being merely intelligent to becoming wise. The primary method for this journey is shadow work. Shadow work isn't about eliminating the shadow. That's impossible and undesirable. To destroy your shadow would be to destroy your own vitality and creativity. As Jung famously stated, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The goal is integration. It's the process of turning to face the parts of yourself you've disowned and building a relationship with them. So how does one begin? First, it requires radical honesty and self-reflection. You must be willing to look at the parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. A powerful way to begin is to pay attention to your emotional reactions and projections. What qualities in other people provoke the strongest negative reaction in you? That intense irritation is a signpost, pointing directly to an unacknowledged aspect of your own shadow. Second, it involves conscious dialogue with these hidden parts. Jung developed a technique called active imagination, where you consciously engage with figures from your dreams or fantasies. This can also be done through journaling or art, any practice that allows the unconscious to express itself without censorship from the ego. You don't argue with the shadow. You listen to it. You ask it what it wants, what it fears, and what it needs. Third, the goal is to find mature expressions for the shadow's energy. If you discover repressed anger, the goal isn't to become a rage-filled person, but to integrate that energy as healthy assertiveness. If you find repressed ambition, the goal isn't to become a ruthless narcissist, but to allow yourself to pursue your goals with passion. Integration transforms the raw energy of the shadow into a constructive part of your conscious personality. This process requires what Jung called considerable moral effort, and above all, humility. It is the humbling admission that you are not just the brilliant, rational ego you thought you were. You are also the anger, the fear, and the imperfection. Embracing this wholeness is what grounds the inflated ego and transforms intellectual arrogance into genuine wisdom. This journey of self-discovery is deeply personal, and the first step is often recognizing ourselves in these patterns. I'm genuinely curious to know which of these dangers you've felt or witnessed the most in your own life. Is it the crushing weight of overthinking, the profound sense of isolation, or perhaps the sting of the inner critic? Share your experience in the comments below. Reading each other's stories can be a powerful reminder that we aren't alone on this path. The thin line between high intelligence and dark psychology is the boundary between the conscious ego and the unacknowledged shadow. An intellect that isn't grounded in self-awareness can become a tyrant, trapping us in prisons of our own making, isolating us, and leading us to sabotage our own lives. But Carl Jung's work provides us with a map toward integration. The challenge for any highly intelligent person is to undertake the most important journey of all, not the exploration of the outer world, but the courageous exploration of their own inner world. It's the journey to meet, understand, and integrate the shadow. This path transforms intelligence into wisdom, arrogance into humility, and isolation into an authentic connection with the self, and, through that, with others. The true mark of a brilliant mind isn't just the ability to deconstruct the world, but the courage to deconstruct oneself and become whole. The ultimate question isn't how intelligent you are, but how whole you are willing to become. If this exploration resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into psychology and philosophy. Your support helps us continue to create content that challenges and illuminates. And if you're ready to explore another facet of our hidden psychological landscapes, well, consider watching our video on the Stanford Prison Experiment and the psychology of power. Thank you for watching.